Hi all, I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Peach Buzz, and I'm really glad you're with us again today. It's a whole new year. This is exciting. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. This is a channel all about kids ministry, kids and youth ministry, family ministries. My master's degree is in kids and family ministries, and I consult with a lot of churches. I travel and speak, and I love anything that has to do with kids and family ministries. So today is a very important topic in kids and family ministries, one that we may not talk about enough. And with the lockdowns for coronavirus, some places are still locked down. We haven't gotten to go live yet. Here in Wisconsin, the lockdowns right now, currently we are not under one. So we are able to meet more in person, but the schools are only 2 days a week where I live. So here's the topic I want to talk about today. What are some of the signs you can look for that a child is dealing with depression? Yes, did you know that a child can suffer from depression and anxiety the same as an adult can? And a lot of the symptoms are the same, but some of them are different. I want to start with a disclaimer that I am not a child psychologist. My master's is in children's and family ministries. I'm working on a doctorate. However, I have a list of trusted child psychologists in my local area that I use, and you need to have one as well. Why am I telling you what signs to look for? Well, because you may be the first one that begins to notice these signs in the children or teenagers that you work with. School teachers are supposed to know these signs. The teachers, parents, and kids ministers and kids leaders and pastors. Why? Because you're the first line of defense. You might be the first one who notices these signs, and you need to notice because depression is a very serious issue. Also, even before the coronavirus hit, depression rates were skyrocketing with kids here in the United States. From what I had studied for my master's, suicide rates were 8 times higher than they were 20 years ago. That should scare every children's pastor out there, every youth pastor out there, when we have kids that are 11 and 12 deciding that there's nothing left to live for, that there's no reason to live. This needs to be taken very seriously, and you need to know the signs of depression, the signs of extreme anxiety, and what to do when you see those signs. No, you don't have to be a trained child psychologist, but you better know a few that you can refer kids and families to. But you need to know the signs so that you can see it if it's happening. Some of the signs are the same, as I said. So here we go. The first sign is the same as it would be with an adult, and that is disinterest in the things that they used to love. The hard part here with kids is they're growing, they're still changing, they're still maturing, and their interests may change in that respect. So I would look to see if that symptom pairs with other symptoms. But if, let's say, they absolutely loved anything to do with airplanes, and they were asking about airplanes, and their whole life was about being a pilot, and and all of a sudden they don't seem to care when you try to talk to them about it. They're just, they don't care anymore. Or they loved baseball and now they seem to not care anymore. I think you need to ask yourself, if you're the parent, are they moving on to a different interest that is more age appropriate? Have they found something new to fill up their time, or are they just not interested in about anything? That might be the key indicator there, that if they've changed to a different interest, that's okay. Maybe they loved t-ball when they were younger and now they're really into hockey. Okay, that happens. But if they are cutting off t-ball, but they don't seem interested in anything else, that is a major sign in adults and children that they might be struggling with depression, is losing interest in the things they once loved. Secondly is withdrawal, and this happens with adults and children. This is where they are avoiding social situations, where they are pulling back, staying long times in their room. Again, kids are changing, they've got hormones, they've got all these changes, and then you add in coronavirus when they may be stuck in the house a very long time, not getting time with their friends. Then they're reluctant to come out of their room, they're just staying in there for hours. That can be a sign of a problem if they are pulling away from activities, time with family. They don't want to come to the table and eat dinner. They don't want to go to a family member's house, if you're allowed to go to a family member's house right now. They don't want to. They're withdrawing from anything having to do with social interaction. That can be a problem. This is hard to spot in your kids that are already introverts. It's easier to spot in your extrovert children. I'm an extrovert, obviously, and those children that are extroverts, when they start to pull back from social situations, you need to, your alert button should go on. You know something is very wrong here and you need to get to the bottom of it. Find out why they're withdrawing. That's a warning signal, and it can be a big cry for help. Number 3, this is the same with adults and teenagers, is if they start talking a lot about death, they start giving everything away, they start talking about what happens after they die, and they stay fixated on that. That can be a sign of depression. And I always suggest that you be honest with kids as much as they can handle for their age level, and you as a parent would know that. If you are not the parent, that is a time where you need to have a conversation with the parent. I would call that an alert. When I see kids in kids' church that have started to withdraw and they don't want to participate and they used to love to, or they are starting to talk a lot about death and their own death, I start talking to mom and dad and just seeing what mom and dad are seeing, because mom and dad can't make that decision unless they have all the details. So you want to make sure you have open communication with mom and dad. If you're a school teacher, you know you're a mandatory reporter. Pastors are mandatory reporters. So if that child makes an actual threat, you are required by law to report it immediately, and you need to. Please, can I beg you, do not ever just shake off a threat from a child, a teenager, an adult. If they are threatening to kill themselves, don't immediately blow that off as, oh, they just want attention. You need to take that absolutely seriously, because that's usually one of the final steps before depression ends up taking their life. You need to take that seriously. You need to report it immediately and get that child help. Even if you promised on a stack of Bibles that you weren't going to tell anyone, I usually tell a child, I'm not going to share something in confidence unless it's going to hurt you for me to keep that secret. I tell kids that up front. And if you want to still tell me, that's fine, but I won't keep a secret that's going to hurt you. I tell kids that all the time. So those are some obvious ones. There's some others that are like adults, where the child suddenly is looking more and more unkept, unwashed. They're not taking showers. Again, this is hard because I just described most of our junior high boys. As a mom, when my son was in junior high, I'd have to say, go in there and take a shower and use soap. And he, Mom, go. You know, you just got back from kickboxing. Go and use soap, use shampoo. So again, this is tough, but I think it's a pattern issue. Once in a while thing is one thing, but a pattern where you're seeing, okay, this child just does not care anymore. They don't care. Eating habits is another one that really you need to keep an eye on. If they are not eating much at all, or they are suddenly eating a whole lot more, either overeating or undereating can be a sign of depression. Too much isolation. Sometimes it means a child has stopped visualizing a good future. They are only seeing the negative, and they're only seeing how hard right now is. And they may start to feed that with food. Or if they feel their world is out of control, they might deal with that with what they can control, which is food. And both can be very, very dangerous ways of coping, and a child needs some different ways of coping. And you may say, well, my child says everything's fine. The vast majority of all children and teenagers, when they are asked how they are, will say, I am fine. I'm great. Everything's fine. That makes things very difficult, but if you think about it, so do adults. Adults have taught them to be this way, and we're going to have to teach them how to be different and express themselves about mental health. I think the best way to do that is to lead by however you feel like sharing your own struggles or the struggle of someone you know, to try to get them to open up and talk to you. And you could say, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing you withdrawing. You're alone a lot. You're really getting isolated. You're not interested in things you were before. And ask direct questions. Have you been having self-harm thoughts? Have you been having thoughts about hurting yourself? And let them talk. Let there be silence for a while if need be, until they are willing to talk to you. If you suspect anything like that and you are the parent, I would remove anything and everything in that house that a child might harm themselves with. You already know this, but you need to keep medications out of a child's reach. You need to I urge parents, if they're suspecting severe depression in their child, to not leave them alone. I've had parents then split up work schedules, one work from home, so that they're not leaving that child alone for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to just sit with their dark thoughts. It's not a good plan. So have those direct questions. I would directly ask, are you feeling depressed? And then you might have to spell it out. Have you been feeling like hopeless? Have you been feeling out of control? Have you been feeling like you just can't do this anymore? I know that's feeding them some answers, but maybe give them a starting point to talk. It's very important. So those are some signs. One unusual one for children that differs sometimes from adults is where adults will have more of a tendency to cry if they're depressed, to have trouble with crying. A child, when they're depressed, tends to get mean. That's one very key difference. A child may get very, very irritable. This is for teenagers as well, where they might have been happy before, they might have been, laid back. Depression typically manifests itself in a child first through anger and depression. Anger is how they're showing their depression. So you want to look and say, well, my child's not been crying. Well, they may not be crying. Depression in a child often takes the form of defiance and anger first. I don't know why that is. They don't tend to present first with tears like an adult would. But that's something just to keep in mind. So if you've got a child in children's church or in your class and suddenly they are angry all the time and they are defiant and they don't care about the things they used to care about, this is a warning sign. This is a warning signal that needs to be shared with mom and dad. Maybe do some digging and some direct questions. But that leads me to very important solutions. What do we need to do for this child? Well, number one, as we've just been saying, you have to take this seriously. It's not a joke. It's not something to blow off. If that child is saying things that are disturbing you, you need to include the parent immediately. You need to have some conversations, some direct questions. And as always, if that child makes a threat of any kind, you report that immediately, because that's one of the last signs. And you want to make sure that you take that seriously, please. Second thing you need to do, you need to know the best child therapists in your area. Okay, if a child in my kids' church has a visible tumor, I am not going to try to remove that myself. I will find a great doctor and support them and pray for them while I take them over there. I do believe God heals. When you have a child struggling with severe depression, if you are the parent, the best thing you can do is find a doctor that can help them work through that, whatever that looks like, and to take it seriously and nip it in the bud now before it gets any worse. How do you find a really good doctor? I would start with your primary care physician and then ask who's good. Who do I take my child to? I would ask the school. I call your school and ask the counselor and say, this is what's happening. I believe that darkness exists really well in the silence. We don't want to talk about these things. So when you pull it out into the light, it loses its power. So yes, I would talk to the school counselor. I would ask them for recommendations of who's really good to work with a child suffering from depression. Number 3, one of the biggest things for a child going through depression, and you know this, is to get them out of that isolation. So they're sitting hours and hours and hours all alone with their thoughts in their room. Not good. Not good. So they've got school at home, which is on a screen. They've got gym is at home. It's on a screen. It's some of the best things you can do, and I know options are limited, is to make sure this child has to interact with other people and has to come out of their room. Even if they complain and they're mad at you over it and you get the aggression, I would insist on family dinner times, family meals together, and family game nights, a scavenger hunt. For us and our family, we have, they play with their cousins a lot, so we're getting them that interaction. You can sign them up for an exercise class online. I mean, that leads me to number 4. Once you've got them interacting with other human beings again, that's extremely important. Number 4, cannot emphasize this enough. Diet and exercise are very, very important. Most American children are severely lacking in their exercise end of it. Yes, you can find great stuff online, and you may have to do it with them to get them to do it, and they're going to gripe and complain, and you may get that aggression. But if you're the parent, it's worth it to dig in there and get them moving. You've got to get them moving. I also this might be controversial, but I live in the north. It's very cold. We don't get a lot of sunlight. So our population here is usually severely low on vitamin D, and that causes seasonal affective disorder. So I recommend to parents get one of those sun lamps. They've got them on Amazon that boost vitamin D. Go get that kid a sun lamp and sit them under it for, says 30 minutes a day, or have them go outside in the sun if you live in an area where you can do that. Where I'm at, it was 14 below zero last week, so it's a little tough sometimes to get them outside. But we try. Like, go outside and shovel snow. Just wear 2 layers of gloves. Go, go, go. Just to try to get them some sun and some fresh air. And diet is really important. Sometimes our kids are sitting around in their room hour after hour with their dark thoughts, eating nothing but stale Cheetos, downing it with sodas, and they're not getting any sunlight. They're not moving. No wonder depression is starting to kick in. And again, that does put the pressure on you to say, hey, we're gonna make a new meal together. We're gonna make a new meal together tonight. I would say don't cut off all snacks or candy or things like that, because that tends to make them hide it and hoard it. And with my kids, the rule is they have to have 1 protein and 1 fruit or vegetable at every meal. I don't even worry about the carbs because I know they'll get the carbs. But that's the rule. You're going to have a protein and you're going to have a fruit or vegetable at every meal. That's the way it is. And they do it. That's how we handle it. I make dinner every night and we sit and have dinner, and my autistic son, if he doesn't like it, he will go get himself some lean chicken and applesauce. I only make one dinner a night. So those are some important things. You need to get them to a doctor that's trained in that. Get them help. If the doctor's not doing very well at it after several visits, change. You're not chained to one for the rest of your life. 2, you need to get them out and force them to socialize somehow with other people. 3, diet, exercise, sunlight, fresh air, extremely important. Very controversial is should I put my child on meds? And I would not say yes or no. I would say that should be up to the parents and the doctor. What's most important is that that child gets the help that they need. So I hope that this helped you see a few signs of depression, what to look for. What signs of child depression have you seen? And what tips would you have for parents and teachers and kids leaders that you work with? What might you be seeing? The depression levels are super high right now with lockdowns and COVID-19. What are your suggestions for that for our kids? It's a real situation, and we need to step up and step in for our kids. But thank you for what you do for Jesus and his kids. We love you. We'll see you next week on the Peach Buzz.
RenderForest.com